Iowa versus Penn State. Can the Nittany Lions get it done against the Iowa Hawkeyes? That is the biggest question heading into this weekend. So, first of all, the last win that Iowa had over Penn State was actually in 2015. So Penn State is known to beat Iowa over the last couple of years. They kind of beat them pretty bad in 2017, 2018. They did not wrestle last season. Now, like I said, Penn State's won big over the last couple of years, winning by scores of 28-13, 26-11, a closer duel in 2015, but the Hawkeyes came out on top 18-12. But Penn State has won 6 out of the last 10 duels. So can they get it done this time? That's really the question here. Now, these are the projected lineups right now for the duel on Friday. And let's just go through this and discuss how Penn State could possibly beat the number 1 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes, because the Hawkeyes are the clear favorites going into this match. Obviously, Penn State with a loss already on the season to Arizona State, early season loss, but they looked pretty good against Nebraska. A couple of upsetting losses in the lineup, but overall, the team looked pretty good. Starting off pretty strong, I'm going to kind of go through some scoring scenarios. I've already discussed the Penn State versus Iowa complete predictions and lineups in another video, but in this, I'm just going to go through how Penn State could win. So let's start off with the facts. Okay, so Spencer Lee at 125, if we start at 125, Spencer Lee is a bonus point machine. He has won every single match but won by tech fall or pin this year. And the one match that he didn't, he won by major decision. So he's 100% bonus point percentage this year. I don't think unfortunately for Penn State, I don't think that's going to change with Meredith. I think that Spencer Lee's probably going to get that tech fall or a pin here. So let's assume he gets a tech fall. Moving on to 133. DeSanto and Roman Bravo Young. This is a marquee matchup right here, number 2 versus number 4. But it's really a toss-up. I mean, I will say DeSanto, yes, he won the last 2 of these matches, and he's been the dominant wrestler. Roman Bravo Young, though, right now, he's kind of on a roll, had an excellent match against Rutgers, and then last week against Nebraska, had another solid match. This match, if Penn State wants to win, Roman Bravo Young is going to have to pull something out and beat Austin DeSanto. That's just one thing that's just going to have to happen. And another thing that's going to have to happen is Nick Lee moving on to 141. Nick Lee's going to have to get that victory over Max Murin. We didn't see Max Murin wrestle last week against Luke Pletcher, whether that was some sort of ploy, whether that was, whatever that was, he didn't wrestle last week. But Nick Lee has just been, he's really been the best. He's coming into, I think, the peak of his career, the best he's ever wrestled in college. He's just absolutely annihilating. He's won 92% of his matches this year by bonus point decision. He's undefeated, 12-0. He majored Chad Red as well as Murin actually lost to Chad Red this season, so going up against that Nebraska match, I really do believe, that Nick Lee and Max Murin, they've wrestled a similar amount of competition this year. However, I think Nick Lee's just looking very, very dominant, and I'm going to have to say Nick Lee can get that. If he can get that major decision, that's going to help push Penn State to where they need to be. Moving on to 149. 149 is going to be another interesting matchup with Lugo and Verclaren. Now, Verclaren, one interesting thing while I was looking at some of these stats and some of the lineups, Verclaren has actually never lost a match by greater than a decision. So yes, he's lost matches. Yes, he's lost a decent amount of matches. However, he's never lost a match by decision unless it was by fall. He was pinned, I believe, twice in his career. Last week was one of them against Nebraska. Shot in and ultimately was pinned. So besides getting pinned, he's never lost a match by greater than a decision. Lugo's coming off his sudden victory loss to Sammy Sasso, but he's looking strong this season. Really, I think Lugo is the favorite here, and let's assume that he gets the decision. So at this point, heading into the match, it's 8-7 in favor of Iowa. So Penn State obviously is going to need to do something very big here. And moving on to 157 at the halfway point in the match, Bergy in Pfeiffer or against Caleb Young. Now, here's the thing. We haven't really seen Bergy wrestle at all this year. He wrestled once in a Lehigh match, and we've seen Pfeiffer wrestle every single other match. I think that, if Penn State, they could be saving him for this particular match. And if they are, I mean, that's big. We've seen Penn State do things like this in the past. I mean, we've seen them save guys or not wrestle guys and just to wrestle them against Iowa or Ohio State. It's happened in the past. It will probably happen again. Now, Brady Bergy going into the season was like top 5, 6, 7. The last time he was in the rankings was actually just a couple weeks ago. Whenever Flo finally took him out of the rankings, he was number 7. On the opposite side is Caleb Young, who's number 4 in the country with a couple losses on the season to David Carr, Quincy Monday, one of his best wins over Hartman. Now, over Hartman at Midlands, that was one of his best victories. Now, Pfeiffer 8-9 on the season, so if he wrestles, it's going to be a little bit of a different story. But if Bergy wrestles, we're going to assume here, because this is the part of the video we're discussing how Penn State can win. If Bergy wrestles and beats Caleb Young, that'll be big for the Nittany Lions. I think that's something that needs to happen in order for the Nittany Lions to win. Now, let's move on to 165, another marquee matchup. I mean, this is, it's really, I would call this the match of the night. I would call this the match of the night because, I mean, number 1 versus number 2, Vincenzo Joseph versus Alex Marinelli. Vincenzo has never beat Marinelli before in his career. Could this be the time that Vincenzo finally beats Marinelli? We'll see. It's in Carver Hawkeye, which is going to be, a little bit of an atmosphere change. We've already seen Marinelli beat Vincenzo where it matters in his home field at Penn State, but this time in Carver Hawkeye, what can happen? And that's going to be a key factor. Now, as I mentioned, Marinelli has beat him twice in the past. However, Vincenzo has placed higher than Marinelli at Nationals. We'll see if Vincenzo can score off of something other than those kind of over or under hooks, I think then he's going to have a little bit better of a shot at Marinelli. And obviously he's been training since last year to beat him, and I know he's in that room with Cael trying to figure out a way to do that. Let's assume here that Vincenzo gets the victory over Marinelli just because, really, at the end of the day, they need it. They need it. At 174, moving on to 174, Mark Hall against Michael Temer. This is an exciting match. People have been looking forward to this match all year, mostly because we haven't seen Temer up at 174. We've seen Hall at 74, haven't seen Temer. Last time we saw him was at 157, he was wrestling Jason Nolf. Now, last time that a couple of these guys wrestled. Now, Temer's kind of been on and off all season. He's 8-0 to Hall's 16-0. So Hall's wrestled obviously double the amount of matches that he has. And last week, it was a big match for Mark Hall where he pinned Labriola, helped the Penn State win the match, win the duel, which is absolutely massive. He also has a win over Cutler, who's one of the top 5 in the country right now, whereas Temer's just kind of coming off of a relatively close match with Labriola. Now, I think Hall is really coming into it this season, really being a strong wrestler, a dominant wrestler, and let's just call, because Penn State needs it, and because we're saying how can they win, let's give Mark Hall the major decision. They're up 17-8, and at this point in the match, they're going to need it because the last 3 matches for the Hawkeyes, it's going to be very, very difficult to win really any of those. So let's discuss this next match. Assad or possibly Brands versus Aaron Brooks. Brooks, of course, number 10 in the country. Assad is number 8, and I mentioned Assad, I mentioned Brands, and even at 197, I'm going to mention Cash Wilkie because we could see these guys bumping anywhere. We saw Wilkie wrestle last week, bumping up to 197, which was a little bit different for the Hawkeyes there. So we could see anything happen here. Could we see Michael Beard come out for Penn State? I don't know. It's unlikely, but you never know with these two teams. So, Assad against Brooks. Now, Assad has a win over Venz this season, whereas, if you watched the Nebraska match last week, Brooks didn't necessarily have the best match against him. Honestly, Venz just kind of dominated him. Now, the one thing I want to mention is that Assad already on the year has a couple losses coming from opens at the beginning of the season from Grandview, and that was one of the losses that he had on the season. Whereas, Brooks needs to. I think what I'm trying to say here is that both of these guys are beatable. I don't think Assad's untouchable. I don't think Brooks is untouchable. I think both these guys coming in as true freshmen are able to be beat, and I think that'll make for an exciting match. Now, let's give this one to Aaron Brooks, making it now 20-8 in favor of the Nittany Lions. Now, I was going to have to pull out something big here if they want to win at this point in the duel. And going into that point is going to be number 4 Warner versus number 15 Rashid. And I already mentioned Wilkie could be coming out at 197. You never know. Of course, we've seen Rashid and Wilkie wrestle in the past, but down a weight, whereas Rashid actually won that match. It may have been by a major decision, I believe. But we're probably going to see Jake Warner here up at 197. Both recent losses to Nebraska, whereas Rashid's only on his 5th match back. And honestly, quite honestly, against Nebraska, he didn't really look that great. He wasn't taking shots at the end of the match whenever he needed to take shots to win, which just drove me bananas. But I think that because of that, we're going to have to give this win to Jacob Warner over Shakur Rashid, and that's going to propel us to the last match of the duel, which is going to be Seth Neville's against Anthony Cassiope. Cassiope wrestling some of the best he's been all season, has seen better competition than Neville's has all season, but Neville's while he's wrestled some good guys this season, hasn't seen the amount of competition. I mean, he does have strong wins over Nebraska, Rutgers, Illinois, Northwestern. Last year, in his redshirt year, his best win was over Yusuf Hamida, as well as Borst and Isaac Reed. Those were some strong victories. But Cassiope's just been trucking his way to the top from the very beginning of the season with wins over Trent Hilger, Gannon Gremmel, Matt Stencil at Midlands. He's just been consistently winning. I don't think he's necessarily been doing anything that crazy special as a wrestler, but he's just been winning. And because of that, because of that, I'm going to have to give the match here to Penn State by a score of 20-14. So let's look at these lineups one last time. Of course, I'm mentioning the marquee matchups here, guys. The marquee matchups that Penn State needs to win are 133, 141, and really 165. If they can find a way to win those 3 matches, then Penn State has a chance. They're going to have to find a way to get bonus points. And, as we know, with Penn State, they find a way to win. And with that, can the Nittany Lions do it? We'll see this Friday.